Hello everyone, I'm 100 Crabs in a Trench Coat, and this is the video review of Transformers Kingdom Rhinox. This figure was purchased for me by my good buddy Grim Lockamus, but is available at the links down in the description. The figure is a Voyager class figure, and is both the best and the worst rendition of Rhinox we have ever gotten. The figure scales nicely to other Voyager class figures in the similar lines. So we've got some Siege, we've got some Earthrise, we've got some Kingdom Studios and Studio Series. It's about the same. And I specifically use Siege Starscream back there because that's how Rhinox is going to interact with Starscream in the upcoming Kingdom show. Which, if you haven't watched the trailer, spoilers, there's stuff in it. The figure has a good heft to him, which I do appreciate. However, I have found that some of his joints are just too loosey-goosey for my taste. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the overall aesthetic, I actually can't argue with. The just look of the figure is really good. The one thing I really don't care for are the chain guns. I love the front of the chain guns, and they do store nicely on the back of the Rhino Mode, or the Rhino head that hangs off the back of the figure. But unfortunately, these little chain guns, they're just not as cool as they could be. They are tiny, and they are meant to peg together like this to be stored in the side of the Rhino's butt for the transformation. But they got nothing to them. They're all skin and bolts. I mean, look at that. There's nothing to them. Now, the Thrilling 30 generations that came out several years ago had a gimmick where, you know, you could push them down and they would spin. You can't even spin these, which sucks. But costs had to be cut somewhere, and they're painted well at least, so that's something? Before we continue with the rest of the review, I do have to show off the card that the figure came with. It's Kingdom card, it's got Megatron and glossy shininess, and then when you peel it away, it's Galvatron. And boy, that doesn't come up well on camera, does it? Things that I really do like about the figure is the head sculpt. That is absolutely fantastic. And the overall just aesthetic from the front of the figure is really good. The only thing I don't like about looking at the figure from the front are, oddly enough, the shins. I think they should be textured like the rest of the figure, but they're not. They're just not. They're flat, matte plastic. And the other thing I don't like about the shins are, well, there's a lot of kibble hanging out behind those shins. And yeah, that's not my favorite. Not much I can do about it, though. Turning the figure around, however, it's hollow central. Those shoulders are super hollow, and the sides of the legs are hollow, and the back is just hollow. How could they have fixed this? Well, maybe have had this back section collapse a little bit better, or split in half and swing up to fill in the gaps here. That would also prevent the one thing that I absolutely hate about the figure is the shoulders just floppy goosey. Floppy goosey, is that even a word? A wonderful trick that they have managed to pull off is the chest. Rhinox has the, well, I mean, it's iconic to Rhinox, the open mouth of the Rhino on his chest. This is actually not anywhere close to the mouth in robot mode, in vehicle mode, in beast mode. I don't know why they did this. All of the teeth are sharp, except for these back molars. Rhinos are herbivores, meaning they eat plants. They don't eat meat. They don't need sharp teeth. In terms of posability, head is on a ball joint, though it is a bit limited. Arms are, well, there's a hinge joint for the shoulder for the transformation, and then the ugliest joint in all of Transformers currently is the shoulder. It's got plenty of movement, as you can see, but it just leaves this gaping hole of an armpit. Swivel at the elbow, bend is almost 90 degrees. Unfortunately, no wrist articulation due to the way that it transforms. There is some torso articulation, though it is a little bit limited because the bottom of the Rhino mouth chest piece hits the top of the hips. Legs kick it forward, can kick back, and can do the splitsies, almost. The little Rhino bits get in the way. Knees bend 90 degrees, ish, but the knee joint is super tight, but there's a pin just underneath the knee joint that is not tight at all, and it can't actually hold the figure up. And then nice movement for feet. Nice feet. Love the detailing of the feet. Got the rhino bits that look more like elephant toes on the outside, and then the, robot toe there. Don't worry, you're not going to see any of this foot in the transformation. Well, in the alt mode, that is. There's a lot of fun to be had with Rhinox, especially in the posability department, though you do end up with a little bit of weirdness going on, especially with the arms, because of those giant weird armpits that I spoke about earlier. Though, that being said, even though it looks a little bit weird, once you've got a dynamic pose going, you kind of just forget that they're there. Even though I find Rhinox to be flawed, it is still a charming figure, and its flaws definitely are not big enough for me to say no, don't buy it. Just go in knowing that there are a couple of aesthetic and functional choices that may not be everyone's cup of tea. Before we get into the transformation, please note that the directions don't show that you can actually fold the mouth down into the, well, back of the figure, but you can. So it is a little bit tough to get it out, but there is a little flange here that you can push against to flip it up and around. You do end up scraping the back of Rhinox's head a little bit. That's what it looks like with the mouth closed. It really doesn't matter which way you do it if you get a hold of the figure. All right, speaking of the transformation, let's go ahead and get into it. First, we're going to come to the forearms and pop the forearms open, flip the fists in, and then close the forearms up. And it's a little bit harder than you might think getting these fists in because they scrape against the inside of the forearms. But once they're there, you're good to go. Then just straighten the forearms out and turn them so that the forearms, or the green forearms, are facing in towards the figure. Next, come down to the sides of the chest and these little brown flaps and just pull them down like that. Then grab the chest just under the chin and pull it forward. Grab the actual front parts of the chest and fold them up and sandwich them together, and those mouth bits will fold just up underneath Rhinox's head into the chest. Then we can take the robot head and turn it around 180 degrees so he's looking at the back of the rhino mouth, or the bottom of the rhino mouth. Then grab the entire rhino backpack and fold it up over the head. And then this is where things get a little interesting. So there is a double set of hinges here in the shoulder. So there's the shoulder that is the arm, and then there's one inside the chest. So push that entire section up into the chest. There we go. And then just kind of accordion everything in. So the same thing on the other side. And I have found that the rhino head gets in the way, so I have to pull it up and out of the way. And there we go. We have the entire front of the rhino complete. Come to the front of the shins and open them up and unfold them. And there is some nice detailing on the insides of the shins. Little gears, some wiring. That is cool. Now, this is where things get a little bit crazy. Remember that really loose hinge I was talking about earlier? Bend the figure at that hinge while at the same time bringing the back of the leg up like this. And then you're going to want to splay the legs out a little bit first. This little section that was peeping out in robot mode, unfold it and then flip out the tail, reach inside and fold out the leg as far as it'll go. Turn it 180 degrees, and then flip it out all the way again. Next, come down to the feet, turn them in, flip them around 180 degrees so that they're towards the inside of the leg, and then fold them in, and there's this tiny little tab that will peg into this peg hole on the inside. And this is where things get a little weird. So, come out to the outside where that side skirt was, on the thigh, push it all the way down. Remember that bit that was on the chest? Kind of push it forward and pull it out and push it down. Fold the entire foot and leg section in and get it sandwiched underneath the back of the Rhino Mode. And then we can come to the sides, and that little, if you've done everything right, that little panel will line up, and both little panels will line up and snap into place. If it's a little bit off kilter, not a big deal. We can fix it later. And then there is a series of hinges inside the leg. What we want to do is push it in towards the body while at the same time sliding it out to the outside. We were like this, and then we push down and in at the same time so that the outside lines up with everything. And then we will inadvertently pop the panel out again, so we just got to get it all lined up. Then we can come into the front and move the front legs down. And then we just repeat the process on the other side, and situate everything together. And then comes the hardest part of the transformation, and that's closing up the backpack and cinching everything together. I don't really have any advice here other than just kind of wiggle with the panels until you can get everything lined up correctly. Now, eagle-eyed viewers may notice that I skipped a step, and that is actually putting the chain guns together and then stuffing them into the beast mode. And they peg in to these peg holes that are just inside the knees. And quite frankly, I don't bother doing this most of the time, but for the review, I will do it because, well, I'll get accused for doing it half-butted and whatnot. So, yeah, even with everything going on, getting these suckers lined up and in place is not easy. And I don't have any real advice for you other than just go with it and do your best. Fine, there, I got it. As good as I'm going to get it tonight. I have only gotten this successful once, and my giant ham hands are just no match for the tiny, tiny tolerances. And here is the Rhino Mode, and it's fine. I'm sorry, it's just fine. I don't know what else to say. There is a bit of robot kibble underneath. There's no denying that. And the only real posability are his, well, his front arm or front legs could do that, and they could collapse in so he could act like he's falling over, and his rear legs could collapse in a little bit like he's trying to dance, and his mouth opens. That's it. That's the only posability the figure has. And here is Rhinox with all his Maximal buddies. And I'm very happy with this set. Rhinox, for me, is one of the weaker of the set, next to Rat Trap, but Rat Trap's weaker because he's literally a core class, and those aren't the best figures, but they're still fun. If I had to rate all of these, I would say get them all, especially if you're a fan of Beast Wars. But if you could only have, say, 3, you could only buy 3. I would buy Primal, Airazor, and Dinobot. And then Cheetor, Rhinox, and Rat Trap, I wouldn't say go to the dustbin, but I would say wait for them to go on sale. That's not to say they're bad. I just think the other 3 are that much stronger. Overall, I do like Rhinox, but these 3 that are literally on top of him are better, in my opinion. Overall, Rhinox is worth picking up, but as I said, if you only can get a few of the Beast Wars figures, I would pick up Dinobot, Primal, and Airazor before our little Rhino boy. He's not bad, but he's not better than those 3. So folks, what do you think of Rhinox? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you all for watching. I have been Baltmatrix, and I will catch you all on the flip side.